All right. Hello, everyone. At least those of you who will join us. Let me make sure this is broadcasting to YouTube because YouTube broadcasts. I'm sorry, because StreamYard broadcasts to YouTube. Okay, we're live. Let me make sure I can see myself. Up there's an ad playing. Hopefully, this stream will be ad friendly. YouTube is a business. Okay, let me skip that. Oh, we got one like. Thank you to whoever liked the stream. I am going to share this over to the Counselor's Corner. Me and David are going to talk about what the Counselor's Corner is. And let's see if anyone from his crew wants to come over. So Facebook. All right, group. Counselor's Corner, public group. All right, I just shared that over to the Counselor's Corner. So I'm going to play the intro. I have a new intro for you all, and I have some things I want to share. Then I'll bring my guest up. Mike Reed, thank you for being here. All the super chat is live. If you want to super chat something to us during this Q&A, and also my Cash App and PayPal are there. So I will see you all on the other side of the intro. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. First of all, please like this stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. That was an updated intro. That song it's called Hard Boiled, and that's by Kevin MacLeod. And there are libraries of free music, copyright free music that you can use on YouTube. I'm sorry, not on YouTube. There are libraries of copyright free music that you can use for your channel on YouTube if you know where to go look. And I found that library maybe about a year or so ago, and I enjoy that bass heavy jazz. So that's what that is. If you want to use that, the credits are right there in the description box. So there we are. A couple of housekeeping items before I bring my guest up. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. The link to my newsletter is in the description box below. There's a greeting, and there is a subscription button at the bottom. Give me a second here. Okay, StreamYard. There's a description button right there at the bottom. I want to thank everyone who has joined thus far. And if you join, I promise I won't give your information away to a third party. That happens sometimes when you start newsletters and compile email lists. Some people do that. I don't. One of the things I'll be talking about in my newsletter is my book project, The Engineers a Western New York Basketball Story. My guest tonight has written the foreword for part 1. Right now, I am working my way through the editing process, which is turning out to be an adventure all in itself, but this link is below in the description box as well. And one of the things, before I bring my guest up, one of the things I want to do with the channel is, if you watch the intro, you saw one of the slides said current events. So I want to turn this channel into a bit of an information center and work in some current events. So I saw an article today that dealt with gas prices and a strategy that the Democrats have for lowering the gas prices. And I think this fits well with my guest because one of the things he talks about regularly on his channel is relationships and relationship issues. And well, we all know that money impacts relationships. So I'm going to read this. It's a short read. And then I'm going to bring my guest up. There's a lot happening in the world today. You know, we're going through a potential reckoning with our monetary system. We're seeing these elevated gas prices. There's a conflict on the other side of the world. We're coming out of this health crisis. So there's just a lot going on. So this article, it reads as follows. To cut gas costs, Democrats to focus on oil company price gouging. Okay. And as I was out walking before the stream, I was thinking that we're kind of in a place where everyone's pointing fingers at the other person. It's Putin, it's the oil producers, it's the gas producers, it's the gas stations, it's the Republican Party, it's the Democrat Party, everyone's at fault. So in this instance, it looks like our Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party, is turning their focuses on the oil companies. And again, this is impacting everyone's pockets. So yeah, I could see this having an impact on relationships in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Democratic leaders in both chambers on Thursday took aim at the nation's largest oil companies, accusing the industry of adopting price gouging tactics that have led directly to the spike in gas prices around the country. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer, well, in New York State, we call him Chuck Schumer, vowed to move swiftly in the coming weeks to vote on legislation empowering the government at both the state and federal level to put new curbs on the industry for the purpose of reducing costs at the pump. Since oil companies are reporting enormous profits, the Democrats argue they can easily afford to pass the gains on to consumers instead of shareholders, particularly amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has only exacerbated the volatility of global fuel markets. They are hoarding the windfall while keeping prices high for people at the pump, Pelosi said during a press briefing in the Capitol. In this time of war, and any time, there is no excuse for big oil companies to profiteer, to price gouge, or exploit families. The Democrats' legislation would grant new authority to both the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys general to scrutinize the methods by which fuel prices are set at both the wholesale and retail level. The new authority would include powers to slap civil penalties on those companies found in violation. Okay, this is just a little bit longer. The proposal is moving through both chambers, led by Senator Maria Cantwell, who heads the Senate Commerce Committee, and Representative Frank Pallone, chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Panel. We know that energy markets can be manipulated, said Cantwell, who pointed to the Enron scandal as a leading example. We need to make sure that there is a policeman on the beat. The FTC has some authority now, she added, but they need more tools. Thursday's announcement is likely to disappoint a growing number of Democratic lawmakers, including those facing tough re-elections in November, who've pressed party leaders to endorse a federal gas tax holiday as a means of lowering prices at the pump. The issue has become an increasing liability for Democrats who control the House and both chambers of Congress and are scrambling to fend off attacks from Republicans, blaming President Biden for the inflationary trend. Okay, let me see how much further. Okay, this is just a little bit longer. I'll read the rest. Yet Democratic leaders have rejected the tax holiday, warning that there's no way to guarantee the oil companies would pass that savings on to drivers. The pros of it are that it's good PR, Pelosi said. The cons are that there's no guarantee that the savings, the reduction in the federal tax, will be passed on to the consumer. Pelosi also noted because such a tax holiday would reduce revenues intended for highway maintenance, Congress could face the additional burden of coming up with budget offsets to cover the shortfall. Party leaders said they are also willing to take a look at another cost-cutting proposal, which could empower the United States to sue OPEC over antitrust violations. Obviously, OPEC is a problem, Schumer said, but the number one problem where we'd have the best effect, the quickest effect, and the most focus is what we're talking about today. Schumer suggested that leadership's strategy to focus on the oil companies was poll tested. If you ask the American people in all the survey data, what is causing the increase in gas prices, number one is market manipulation and big oil not giving a break, he said. That is what we're focusing on. On the question of timing, Pelosi said the Senate bill is pretty much done and the House proposal isn't far behind. Pallone's committee will be considering the House version during next week's House recession, she said, with designs to bring it to the floor shortly afterwards. Ours has a little more to be done in the course of the next week. We would hope to have all of this done pretty soon. The idea of adopting tougher new regulations on the oil industry, however, is almost certain to meet fierce competition from Republicans in both chambers, raising immediate doubts about whether Cantwell's bid Cantwell's bill can win the 60 votes needed to defeat the GOP filibuster in the Senate. Pelosi predicted the public outcry over the high cost of gas would force at least some Republicans to jump on board, if only for fear of being seen doing nothing to help struggling consumers. If Republicans stand in the way of us feeling the consumer, if the Republicans stand in the way of us feeling the consumer of the stranglehold of big oil, you think they're going to blame that on Democrats, she asked. When the bills hit the floor, Schumer said the Republicans will face a dilemma. Okay. Could be pandering, could be game playing, but this is what's happening today. And I think this is affecting all of us. So with that, everyone, I'm going to bring up my guest, the controversial counselor, David Lorenzo Glover, and we're going to just kind of talk about some things, talk about his channel, talk about being writers in the next hour or so. So what's going on, David?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, yourself?
I'm good, man. Maintaining, just trying to survive.
Okay, that's all of us. That's all of us.
Yeah.
As I was reading that, I was thinking, I don't want to keep David waiting, but over on Twitter years ago, some a woman tweeted, and this might, I don't know if you guys asked this in the counselor's corner or on the show, but one woman stated that if a man's gonna take her out, he needs to give her some gas money. So that's out there. So this impacts everybody and impacts everything.
That's a good one. I don't think we put that out there directly, but my wheels is always spinning, so I might stir the pot with that.
Okay. How are things on your end, in your world?
My world, we've been back as far as when we look at the pandemic and everything that we've been through. I've been back to work on a regular basis, full-time basis since last, I think maybe, was it March or April? So it's been a year. I mean, because some of these kids, they haven't been in school, and I work at a middle school in Baltimore County, in case you don't know. And it's been interesting because, like I said, they haven't been in school, some of them 18 months to almost 2 years. That it's been a struggle as far as behavior wise. It's like reteaching everything over and over. And I work at a middle school, so unfortunately we deal with grade levels. So I have the 7th graders, which really they're like 6th graders, because most of them haven't been in the middle school building, which it's a different format. And I know most of you know how that operates. Elementary, usually with one teacher. Then when you get to middle school, you got 7, 8 teachers. So just dealing with that on a daily basis it's been tough, but I'm glad, in a sense, for me, virtual didn't work in my role as a school counselor. So I'm glad to be in the building as far as that, to have that face-to-face conversation.
Okay. So middle school kids, so they're having a tough time. When did they come back? Did they come back like in January, or?
They start allowing, I guess, the most students, the most neediest students, to come in last March. So it was only pockets of certain students, maybe like 40 or 50 kids per grade level, that actually came in the building. So therefore it left out a lot of students. Like, again, I said I dealt with the 7th graders. So last year they were 6th graders, and in Maryland, middle school starts 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I know, like in New York, it might be New York State, it might be 7th and 8th is considered like middle school. So they, again, it's just like almost like they're we got two 6th grade classes at one time. So that's been the struggle dealing with those behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Yeah, as I was telling you, I went back to the office for the first time, geez, in over 2 years, yesterday.
Wow.
So, so that was a big deal. I mean, because you're at home, you're kind of used to being at home, and now you're getting on transportation with everybody else, and um, you're going back into an official workplace. So I mean, it was fine when I got there, but once you get used to being at home for a while, you're used to being at home. You're used to just doing that. You're used to um just doing everything at home.
Yeah, and that was one of the things as far as us, because last year when everybody came back, well, it wasn't everybody because some students was hybrid, but we had Wednesdays like asynchronous days, so it would like we would be there 2 days, then Wednesdays we could work from home, then you had Thursday and Friday, so it was almost like we had 2 Fridays, Wednesday and then the actual Friday. So the split between that, so a lot of teachers felt like, okay, we should do this on a regular basis, like when we go back we should have that Wednesday as an option, but I don't think it ever it obviously it didn't go that far. So when once we came back full time, it was 5 days a week.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So last question about this: Are the kids just not used to being in a classroom, or just like adults? They're kind of used to just being at home and doing their own
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I think they're used to being at home, and for that while that really for a kid to be virtual and you don't have to come on camera, it's not mandatory. So some of those behaviors are kind of the same, that they're not putting in that work is, but they wanted that social component, but it's a lot of playtime and they're doing a lot of playing around, and that's probably only a small percentage, but the small percentage we know could um, dominate a school where that might only be 10% of the kids that act up, but they can kind of control the masses of what's going on. But there, it was a lot of shortcomings, mainly socially, as well, because when they were at home, they spent a lot of time on the computers and also social media. So all of that stuff is coming out, and we still have to deal with those interactions. So it's a lot of backlash behind it.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's start with we're eventually going to work our way around to the counselor's corner and the Facebook group and the Monday night show. But let me pick your brain a little bit about writing and authorship, because you've published 2 books, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
2 books and a revised copy of the one book. So yeah, 2 books.
2 books and a revised copy. Let me ask you this: what were the hardest parts of finishing your books? Was it all a smooth ride for you, or were there challenges at some point?
Well, there was challenges. The first one I kind of went with, as my publicist said, like a vanity publishing company that
Yeah.
kind of promise you they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And you really realize, you got a hope and a dream that you're writing a book. So you're like, okay, they said they're going to take care of all of this. And you're really not too concerned. But then you realize they really didn't do that much, but they, got payments from you. And I think that was the tough part, like far as the editing and stuff like that, because I kind of slept on it the first edition. They kind of sent it to me. I kind of glanced over it, but I didn't really get other people involved to say, "Hey, take a look at this." So in the first edition, it wasn't. There were little minor errors, nothing that really kind of um, dummied down the book. The content was still strong and it was still good, but I think that was the toughest part, like making sure that you have a team in place, your own personal team, depending on however you're going to do it, whether it's with a vanity publisher or if you want to self-publish, to make sure you have a team that has that's strong suited in certain areas.
Interesting. Okay. Well, all right. Yeah. So, yeah, my mother, she's a published author herself. She wrote a book on grant writing. So she went through this process years ago. Okay. LJ, I don't know, David, I don't know if you're familiar with savings minus debt. You
Oh
familiar with
no.
the savings minus debt?
Uh-uh.
Okay. LJ is the founder of Savings Minus Debt. His mission is to help people own themselves, get out of the debt matrix, those kinds of things. So money and finance and becoming debt free and owning oneself, that's his passion. So he says, I'm looking for someone to write my book. Okay. And I'm sure that would be a very compelling book. So my mother is she edits most of my essays. I would not ask her to edit this because it's way too big. But I certainly envision that I would pay somebody to edit it, you know. And I envision that, I know that I'm not a grammar expert myself. I put stuff down on paper. I get a nice flow. It makes sense to me, and then I hand it over to someone else to edit it. So I knew that I had to do that. But I sent her three chapters last weekend, and she said, "Oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. The editor is gonna charge you, a fortune." But I already envisioned in my LLC. I don't want to talk too much about that, but I already allocated basically. I already had a plan in place for paying someone to do that. But that's where I'm at right now. But it sounds like, I mean, the main thing for me is I have the content, I have the story there, the way that I want it. I don't mind tweaking the grammar, but I want the actual vision to stay in place. And sometimes that might require, when you're capturing other people's voices and you're capturing conversations, the challenge is making sure it's grammatically correct, but also keeping the essence of what's being said and keeping the authenticity of what's being said. So that's kind of where I am. I don't mind someone cleaning the grammar up, but I don't want the vision changed.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with it. The more heads you get involved, they may try to change what you have, and they may not see clearly your vision. So sometimes you say, I don't want to talk to nobody else about this because each person's going to come up with something different. So you just have to, you definitely have to have a team, but you have to find some people that's probably just, okay, if I'm going to do editing, I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm not just going to try to put my own personal thoughts and feelings toward this because this is his vision, his project. I'm just cleaning up what he wrote and stuff like that. So I guess that's one of the challenges.
Okay, that's good to know. So just briefly, a team, who should be on the team is, well, it sounds like an editor, right?
So, editor, someone graphic arts, the graphic design. I think pretty much if you got those two bases covered, then you're kind of solid because those are the main things. Of course, the book cover, that's what people see at first. That's the initial attraction. And I know for me, and I haven't went in a while, and I used to go to Barnes and Nobles on a regular basis. That used to be like one of my weekly things, and what would capture my eyes is like the book cover. And then you look inside and then you see the content. Okay, this is something I want to purchase. So that was one of the things that I learned by having a publicist at the time um, that the book cover is essential. So make sure that you have someone that can orchestrate that area, that's creative and can see your vision and put everything together in the book cover, because that's the first thing people tend to see.
Hmm. Okay. Before we move on, any other words of wisdom for young aspiring writers? Because what you just gave some valuable game there, in my opinion.
So one of the things is, I just think, for me, I had to treat it like it was a baby, a child. Like I had to go and trimesters. But one of the things, that we live in the world of social media, that obviously your people that follow you, if you're on social media, keep them abreast of your project step by step.
Yep.
And that's what I did. I was like, this is where I'm at. I just had the proof sent to me as far as my book cover. I would even show that. And what's your thoughts? I kept them abreast, so they were getting more excited. They were getting excited as I was going along. So it was easy as far as when it was time to do pre-sales and stuff like that. Some people followed me through that whole process. So they were like, okay, when is the book coming out? I'm ready to purchase it. I can't wait to read it. So I looked at it as just like when someone has a child. You keep people abreast of the different steps, and they kind of internalize it. And I think that's what happens. So you just don't want to bust out with a book. You like, I'm an author. You want them to know, like, this is the stages of that, even the painful stages, and you want to get their feedback because you want them to be a part of the journey. So that's critical.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's one of the advantages of YouTube, especially if if you want to self-publish, however you want to do it. These platforms are important tools for that. And so at some point I knew, well, that was one of my reasons for coming to YouTube. But at some point I said, okay, now I need to start telling people about it. I have these promotional essays rolling out. Um, and that's one of the things my mother asked me about was, are you gonna? I think she asked me, was I gonna go with a publisher? And I was explaining to her, well, I could, but I want to keep control of the thing. So I'm thinking about going the self-publishing route. But people with today's tools, you can pretty much market it yourself. That's the
Mm-hmm.
way I see it. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a big enough following, if you have people supporting you, then it's not 20 to 30 years ago. It's a different
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, David, thank you for that. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the counselor's corner. Um, well, one other thing, what if someone asked this question here, and I know the answer is yes, but I think the question is how many. Someone asked the question, do people read books anymore? Are people reading books today in 2022? I think the answer is yes. But I think the question is how many people are reading. I don't have an answer for that. I'm sure you don't have an answer for that, but that's a question I've heard come up recently.
And I think for me, like, I've bought tons of books, and being a part of YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and trying to, being a content provider, I might take bits and pieces from books. It might be
Hmm.
something I want to make a post about, and a book interests me, and I might kind of skim read through it, and I'm like, oh, this is powerful, and then I might drop that. So I think I do a lot of that, um, because usually I'll start a book, and recently I may not get all the way through it, but if it's a good book, I'll always go back to it and look for resources and guides and stuff like that. So But that depends on somebody's lifestyle. That somebody might be have an opportunity to vacation a lot, and that's part of their day, spending time reading, whatever the case is. But people do still read.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the counselor's corner. All right. I was thinking the other day, and I'm going to ask you to talk about the show. But I was thinking, it's the grown and sexy crowd. It's the Gen Xers. It's the grown and sexy crowd. But anyway, tell us about the counselor's corner. You guys do a show on Monday night. I know you
Monday,
also have a Facebook page.
Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we pretty much it's kind of based on my whole concept of my original book, Cocktail Conversations, where I try to post different things in regards to relationships, friendships, family, um, work issues, health issues, educational issues, mistrust, loyalty, the dating game, and child drama. So usually it's those 10 core things that I post about, usually day-to-day issues. So I do have a group on Facebook called the Counselor's Corner, and I get a lot of slack because there's people that post. It's all about perspectives, and people post what they think and feel, but sometimes it kind of ruffle people's feathers and makes people feel uncomfortable. But that's been my whole vision with this, because I understand you only grow when you're uncomfortable. If you think if you think everything is all right, typically you stay stagnant and you don't have the resiliency to push forward. So for me, I know, like, in many of our families, there's a lot of dysfunctions. So one of the things I wanted to do was kind of talk about um, some of these things. And over the years, I probably started this, like, writing posts and stuff on Facebook like 2013, 2014. And one of the things people used to always say is, man, like, is there any happy endings with your scenarios? And I'm like, this is in Disneyland. And this is stuff that I've seen, I've known. People share stories with me, and then I post it, and it's like, oh, you almost had me. I was into it. I was like, okay, this is going to turn out good. And it's like in the twists and turns of the different scenarios, like, you would get me again. And but that's the thing, like, you just never know, and that's kind of like a microcosm of what we go through in our households. The twists and turns. Things could be good, then all of a sudden, one little thing could change up everything. So that's been kind of my whole vision with it, based on my book, Cocktail Conversations. Years ago, I did blog talk, and I had a show called Cocktail Conversations. But then when I said, okay, I'm gonna change it up a little bit and have a little spinoff with the Counselor's Corner, and that was more so me and my thinking space, the Counselor's Corner, and just putting these issues out there, letting people attack it, and letting them be indifferent. Like, they may have a whole different perspective than with the average. And I think that's what really irritates people, because somebody might be saying something that's totally off the wall that you never heard about, but it's their life, it's real. So that's why in counseling they say there's no such thing as reality, it's only perception. So you can't tell nobody that their life is in real. When they experience it, that's their perception, that's what they live through. So that's pretty much what the show is based on, those type of dialogues.
So counselors, for the most part, that's something they share, is that there's no it's perception, right? It's not your truth isn't the law for everybody. It's
Yeah.
a lot of it's perception.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I just read, I don't know if you heard of the book The Four Agreements. Have you heard of that one?
Actually, I got that book and I looked at it the other day, and I was like, I really need to go through this book.
Yeah, it's a short read,
Hmm.
but it's a good read. And one of the things that the author talks about is that, well, one of the premises for the book is that we're all walking around in our own dream. We're all seeing the world in our own unique way with our own unique agreements. And
Hmm.
that's what's hard is that, we've accepted certain agreements, sometimes willingly, sometimes unknowingly. Um, and not everyone is living with the same agreements. And that's what causes the conflicts in our lives with our significant other, with our relatives, with our coworkers. So it's important to keep that in mind, that you're seeing the world through your lenses and your experiences, and other people might have different experiences and lenses.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, that's the conflict that people don't really think about that. They just say, hey, this is how I live. This is how everybody's supposed to live. So what you're saying is foreign to me and I don't understand it. And I was just sharing with somebody the other day that when I first came on, I wanted to have a little edge about myself. That's why my alias is the controversial counselor. I would get kicked out of Facebook groups on a regular basis.
Really?
And yeah, and part of it was I was saying stuff that they never, uh, it wasn't part of their world. And they would say, "Who are these people you hanging out with?" And I said, "This is when you step outside. This is going on." And what was interesting is I would get kicked out, but then it would be several people from those groups that would inbox me and request me to, as a friend. And I'm like, yo, wait a minute, me and you went toe to toe. Why are you requested? Like, and they like, listen, it's like after I thought about it, I was like, the stuff that you were saying it was interesting to me. It was different. So I wanted to continue to follow you if you don't mind. And of course I accepted them because I was still trying to, grow this concept. And I just always thought that was interesting. I used to stay get kicked out of groups.
Well, you know what? Um, there's a lot to what you just said. What I've learned with hey, AB Media, thank you for stopping through. I've One of the questions I'm going to ask you is what you've learned as a YouTube content creator, but I think in terms of social media in general, I've learned that every space is different. So Facebook is different from Twitter. Those two are different from LinkedIn. Obviously, LinkedIn's for your professional growth and networking. Each of those spaces is different than Pinterest. Each of those
Hmm.
spaces is different than Reddit. And then YouTube is its own social media space as well. But the interesting thing about Facebook, well, one of the more prominent content creators here has said that Facebook is a quote unquote female dominated space. Um, and people on Facebook don't always know what people on Twitter are talking about, and they don't know what people on Reddit are talking about, and they don't know what people on YouTube are talking about. So when you introduce something into Facebook for certain people, it's staggering.
Hmm.
It's whoa, where did you come from with that? Who hurt you? You sound like a supporter of who.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that from? You sound angry. You sound this. You sound that. And it's like, well, there are there are classrooms or arenas or forums where people are talking about this. You all just aren't used to hearing it. So I've learned, um, well, for my sanity and for the people in Facebook, I've learned maybe everything doesn't need to be shared in Facebook for me personally.
Hmm.
because it's like we just talked about with the four agreements. We're all kind of living in our own dream, in our own world. and we've made certain agreements, and when those become disrupted, for some people, it could be earth shaking. Yeah.
And you know what? And that makes me think, like, even with my regular page, David Lorenzo Glover, I have 5,000 followers. I don't even get that much activity. And a lot of that, and most of those people are people from, Niagara Falls, Buffalo area, Baltimore area. And I don't know, they probably annoyed as hell by some of the stuff I post. But then in the counselor's corner, I realized these are people that's here in this platform that want to be here, and they kind of good, bad, or indifferent. They stay and they even deal with everything that the discussions that go on there. So I just find that interesting. I'm like, well, obviously the people from home and even some of the people I know in Baltimore, they're not ready to deal with these conversations that's being discussed because some of it hits home and we like to sweep things under the rug and hope it doesn't pop up. But the dirt is still going to be there when you lift up the rug. It's going to come out. It's going to pop up. And a lot of people rather deal with that instead of saying, hey, let's talk about this and let's get this stuff out there. So I kind of look at it like that. Sometimes you have to have an isolated platform to get your message across.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I try to share you guys on my community tab as often as possible. Sometimes I come up, oftentimes that time of night, I'm kind of winding down.
Yeah.
So I'm there in the chat, trying to help support. But the name of the channel is what?
Oh, the controversial counselor.
Okay. Controversial counselor. Okay. So do you want to yeah. There are conversations being had in different arenas, and yeah, people aren't used to hearing certain things. People aren't used to hearing certain points of view, and it can be some of the stuff can be angering. Some of the stuff can be taken as hurtful, and I totally get it. I totally get it. Depending upon who's disseminating the message, it can come off as very hurtful. It could come off as toxic. But my opinion is whatever it is, people are talking about this for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing was always the why. Why are they talking about this? What's at the heart of the issue? Is there some validity to what's being said? So you have the channel, and then you have the Facebook group. Talk a little bit about the Facebook group, because I know that scenarios and topics and scenarios get posted in there. It gets a little testy at times, but talk about the Facebook group.
The Facebook group, like I said, is all driven and based on the whole concept is about from my book Cocktail Conversations. So, it's posts. For a while, it used to be just me making posts, and as people got more comfortable, they start posting stuff. And the backlash that is often said is this a female bashing group and stuff like that? And I'm like, no, you females, y'all can post whatever y'all want. They're starting to get comfortable too and starting to post things, but it's day-to-day situations and learning and growth from other perspectives. So it's never, if a guy's sitting around thinking, maybe he has been hurt and he may post something, but that doesn't mean it's too many people live in absolutes, and they say, well, oh, this is because one person, maybe 3, 4, 5 may post certain things in there, it may come off this way, then all of a sudden all the men do that. And I'm like, that's not the case. Why don't y'all challenge those men that post about certain things? Because obviously they're gonna, and the thing about the counselor's corner, it's a pretty much 77% women in the group and like maybe like 23% men. But the men do most of the, talking and posting, but the women are there. But they, as much as they complain or say anything about the counselors, they're still there. Because obviously something is resonating in them and they're listening, but they just don't want to admit it and say, man. And some of them have growth and said, you know what, I can agree with some of the things that you're saying. So it's all about learning and feeling uncomfortable, and having those courageous conversations, and they need to be had. So that's what the counselor's corner is mainly about, just day-to-day situations, and people post, and they usually fall under those 10 core things, that 10 core chapters in my book, Cocktail Conversations. So if you just joining late, friendships, relationships, family, health issues, education, work issues, loyalty, mistrust, child drama, and the dating game. And those are that's usually where I post my stuff from. It's usually anything I post is usually under those areas. So it's kind of like the build up, we post, and then build up throughout the week, and then Monday night we have the show, and then some of the information comes for some of the things that was said in the counselor's corner throughout, like Tuesday through Sunday. Then Monday we start off the week and we have the show, and we have like 4 essential talking points, and we never really get through the 4, because usually the top one we go on for close to an hour about that. And I have to get better with that and say, hey, we're going to stick to a script. But people be flowing, and they're open, and they're talking, and they're having personal testimonies and sharing their experiences. So I kind of let it go on, because I know as adults we need these platforms as well. Because if you think about it, you decide, okay, I'm tired of talking to my kids. I want to go out. When you go out to a club, you really ain't gonna hear. You're really not having conversation. You can't even hear nothing, because you got loud music or whatever the case. I guess you could go to a restaurant, but it's not like you could sit at the table for 3-4 hours. Sooner or later, you got to either move, because there might be other people waiting. So, it was an opportunity to have. Hey, you can be from the confines of your house, get your popcorn ready, your drink, whatever, and let's have some adult conversations, and let's challenge each other for growth.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that, first of all, when you have a panel of 7 to 8 people and everybody wants to chime in,
Mm-hmm.
if you get that hot topic, yeah, you guys are going to stay on that hot topic. And then the other thing I was going to say was, it's interesting is that when you're in the counselor's corner on Facebook, it's not 100% men agreeing with men. It's not 100% women agreeing with women. There are, men agreeing with the women. There are men defending the women, and then there are women agreeing with the men.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like there are 2 distinct sides going against one another. There are people on both sides kind of going over to the other side, and there's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Very entertaining, but a lot of stuff, a lot of things come out in these conversations.
Okay, so your 2 books are Cocktail Conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it here in the chat. And No Friday Foolishness.
Yes.
I believe I have a copy of both of them here. Okay, so those are David's books, folks. All right. Let's see. Are there any particular topics or issues that are standing out to you right now? I know the recent thing is Shaq and his daughters, and I think before that, obviously the Will Smith thing was big, and but then there are just times when people just post things, and it goes on for like hundreds, 100 comments.
Yeah.
Is there any scenario recently that stands out to you, or?
Well, definitely the Shaq one when he was saying that he when his sons get 18, he's putting them out, and his daughters can pretty much stay in the household for as long as they want, but he wants them to be able to kind of find a man that they can control. So I think that control mechanism is going to be a talking point. And I already did one post about that in regards to why do some women like men that they can control. And some people may say, that's not me, but we know that it's true that some women look for certain type of men that they can control and they can dominate, and they'll just over the years that's who they'll deal with. And when they have someone that gives them a little pushback, they may decide, nah, he's not for me, or come up with something like he's borderline obsessive, he's too aggressive, or whatever the case is. And so we're going to talk about that. And like you said, the luxury and the beauty of it is that we usually have 3 or 4 women on the panel, and they don't all agree with each other. They go at it and they make sharp comments toward each other. So it's they're coming from different places and different experiences. So you just never know what's going to come out of it, what's going to come out of the conversation, because they all have different dynamic personalities. But that's one of the things that we're going to touch on with that particular subject.
Okay. What lessons have you learned since becoming a YouTube content creator? Because I know you were, for the most part, you were broadcasting over to Facebook first, and now you simulcast to both. So what have you learned about this whole thing?
It's what may seem simple, that it's a lot to it. And even our collaborations, you have taught me a lot. Even the StreamYard thing, I would have never went this route. And even with my YouTube, I had a YouTube channel, but I never really did anything with it. And then sometimes you have to collab with people to kind of push you for it. You see what they're doing, and I have to say, brother, you've been putting in work, man. I remember at one point we was like at the same thing, and because I'm a competitor, and then I'm like, oh, he just blew past me, so it's nothing I could do. But I know that you spend a lot of time in other groups with other content creators, and I never got to that point, because I think with my day-to-day job as a middle school counselor, by that time I'm like, I'm over I'm over listening to anybody, and I know that I have to get better with that and get back and get on the scene with that, because I've seen how your numbers have grown, and it's still, my numbers is, it depends. Certain people that you connected with, the Counselor's Corner, Herbert connected with, that has helped out a lot. So I guess you got, if you want to be social, you got to be social. You got to get out there. You got to mingle in this world and put yourself out there. And I guess that's one of the things I'm learning, to say, you know what, I gotta do something different to get different results. So I see the growth, but it's small. It's getting there, and anytime you see progress, it does something for you. Whether it's just 2-3 extra subscribers, you're like, okay, it feels good. It's a win for you. You're getting closer to the end goal.
Yes. Give me a second here. Let me see. Just look up.
And one of the things while you were doing that, and I don't try to hold back no punches. And I know even with LinkedIn, that's a platform for itself. But sometimes I may even post some of the stuff from Facebook and YouTube to LinkedIn. And one of my professors, he's one of my professors from my counseling of school education. He's one of my bigger supporters, and I'll post stuff and I'll say, he'll respond, he may comment, and I say, I know this isn't the traditional counseling theories that you taught me. And he's like, David, keep doing what you're doing. He said, and this is a Caucasian guy, older, probably, I don't know, probably in his 60s or mid 60s. He said, keep doing what you're doing. People learn different. There's people learning from what you're doing. So that gave me a vote of confidence to say, hey, man, I'll just keep trying to shake it up. Because if we know one thing, we know that traditional approach now in this world, it's changed. It's different. And so need people to shake things up and be able to say, hey, this is what I feel, and this is what I say. And I think there's respect at that level for somebody trying to step out there and put themselves out there like that. So that was kind of a good vote of confidence. I'm like, I know these ain't the traditional theories that I learned in college. It's like, no, you fine, man. Keep doing what you're doing. People learn differently.
Okay, everyone, I just dropped David's channel, the link to David's channel there in the chat. If you're not subscribed, please go over and subscribe. Yeah, it's kind of like boxing. It's a sweet science. I mean, I'm still figuring things out about YouTube. I think that, well, certainly the pandemic helped because I was at home all the time and I had time to shoot video, and I think there's a networking component. There's a consistency component. And then you have to kind of figure out what your niche is, right? So, you can, and me and Ron Will were talking about this. We talked about this about 2 weeks ago. You can talk about what's trending. You can talk about the Will Smith slap and what Future and Sierra and Russell Wilson are doing, and you could talk about all those things, the celebrity gossip. But I think you also have to think about uh, what was your original reason for coming.
Mm-hmm.
What's your niche? Are you just riding the wave, or are you being true to why you came in the first place? So there's a bit of a balance there. I mean, obviously, no matter what you're doing, you want to gain traction somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think though it's a sweet science, right?
Yeah.
And then there are different audiences. There are people who just want to hear about Future and Russell Wilson and Sierra and the Will Smith slap, and then there are people who want to hear about current events, and there are people who can listen to science talks. Not everybody can listen to that, so it's definitely a mixture of things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And sometimes even with the Future and Will Smith, you have to take it a level and maybe have to put it in everyday perspective, like not someone that's, you know, got mega money, but just the average person that still goes through these same type of things, but it's just on a lower level and it'll never get exposed like that. But it's people, it's guys that's probably in relationships now that go through the same thing that Will is going through, or there's women that kind of may have a personality like Jada, but she may just be, a nurse or some, maybe in the business, banking or something like that. There's people that still have similar characteristics. So sometimes we have to downscale it to our day-to-day situations instead of looking at them as examples, because it's happening all the time.
Okay. Yeah. So there are levels to this. There's what you present. There's how you present it. Are you going to do live streams? Are you going to do pre-records? Are you going to use an avatar? yeah, there are levels to this. Are you trying to monetize, or are you just trying to get your message out? You know, are you able to leave your content up, or people flagging your channel down? There's levels to this thing, man. It's crazy.
It's
It's crazy.
true.
But you know, if you stick with it and you're able to build a following, then you can do some good things with it. You know, I view it as a tool. I view it as a tool
Yeah,
for some longer term goals. Okay.
yeah, definitely.
Well, let's see. Talk about how the lineup in the show has changed, because you had your original lineup, and now you have your the current lineup, and that original lineup, woof,
Yeah.
it was like,
well, well, originally it started with me and Herbert Lewis, the Big Bad Wolf,
Big Bad
and
Wolf.
he's been kind of side by side with me from day one when I had Blog Talk. So it just made sense for me to say, okay, now as technology is increasing, I'm about, and I said I'm about to start doing going live. I want you to be a part of it, because I know I'm kind of low key, and I'm kind of like a counter puncher that I sit back and observe, and then I'll get my jabs in here and there. But the Big Bad Wolf, he's gonna come hard and direct at you for most of the time. I'm not say most of the time, but a great deal of the time. So it started off with him. Then we had one young lady. I'm not going to mention her name. She joined, and then it started being, and it was still me and Herb, and then it was like 3, 4, 5 other women that came on consistently, but they always viewed Herb's message as it was an attack toward single women instead of just listening to what he was saying. So that's how the shows used to be. Anytime he said something, it was like they was ready to dig their claws into him. So it was always a lot of back and forth. And I got feedback from people, and they would say, like, yeah, the topic was good, but we couldn't get anything because it was so much arguing and chaos. And even my mother said it. She was like, well, I tell you, she watched all the shows. She was like, I like the show now, whatever, because them other ones, they was doing too much, whatever, and they did not have to attack him like that. That's his opinion, and that's his opinion. But I think they personalized and internalized everything, which led to, as soon as he would say something, and if they didn't agree with it, they were ready to attack him. Where now it's more versatility, that got a different age range of women with different experiences, and they kind of, we don't always agree, but they have the ability to kind of have that buffer to say, well, I'm not going to be yelling and screaming. But don't get me wrong, we have some altercations, some back and forth that people may go at it and get a little testy. But for the most part, it's a good flowing conversation along, with the people that come in on the chat and they say their things. So it's more peaceful, but it still gets chaotic at times. But that the first set of it was, I like to call it, I like to call them, and if they're listening now, I don't care, the Ratchet Five, because those are the comments that I used to get from other women. They're like, David, who are these ratchet women on this
Really?
panel? Yeah, I used to get that. So they realized that, like, they do not have to act like that. Why are they letting his words get to them like that? So, but now on the panel, I guess you call it emotional intelligence. They are able to decipher that and say, he's not going that's his opinion. It's not going to move me one way or another. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Well, man, that there were I don't know how Herb did it, man. There were some nights when I come up and try to cover his flank, and I'd be like, like this. I wanted to shout them out, but I'll leave their names anonymous. But I think, yeah, man, I think that was an instance of just not. I mean, knowing the intent of your show, not being able to kind of just take a step back and say, okay, where is this coming from? Why are they talking about this? What's the genesis of this? It was just instant reaction. Again, I think that some of the things that Herb was pulling in were from other spaces, and they weren't privy to those other spaces. So it was like, it was like being shown something that was completely foreign and unknown to them.
Yeah.
So I get that.
But it was still, and not to discredit them, they were knowledgeable. They had great experiences. They had great insight on the topic areas that we discussed. But it would just get too chaotic when everybody's trying to get their point across at one time. So now, we picked up another guy. He came on toward the tail end of when they were the Ratchet Five was a part of it. Willie A. Price speaks nothing but the truth, and so he's been a regular since then. And then we have I'll give them a shout out now. We have the lovable Lakia Perry, and a lot of you guys, everyone here, y'all, come for her on the chat, but she's solid and she sticks it out. Christine comes correct all the time. Brooks, she's more of the laid back, the motherly figure. Like, you can't rattle her. She's just smooth. And then you have Annetta Life Coach Williams, who she's she's kind of, she can put it down, but she's kind of from the behavioral mental health nursing side. So she knows a lot about those avenues, but yet and still, and she's spiritual, stuff like that. But she's versatile, so she's gonna speak her mind. And then we got
she's fair. When I don't agree with everything she says, but she's fair. She's not she's willing to call either side out on any foolery.
And she's not going to always side with the ladies, and she's going to say, okay, I agree with David, I agree with Herb, that's a good point, Willie. Then we have Shaughnessy, the youngest in charge, Shaughnessy, and actually she's one of my former I was her counselor in high school. So
really,
it's just funny how now that she's 30 and she's joined, and she brings a different perspective and dynamic. But I guess what allures her to stay on there, because she like, okay, they're older, I want to be knowledgeable about some of these things, but I still want to bring my experiences to the table too. So it's a great mixture of folks. But don't get it twisted, there's still some bumping heads here and there, but not as much as the first set.
Well, don't leave out Anita.
Oh yeah, Anita. Well, Anita's part of both of them. She was a part of that.
That's right.
And she left, but then she came back. And Anita, she's kind of in between. When she gets going, she knows how to hone in on a point. And sometimes you're like, all right, oh, you wanted Anita, you go get it tonight. But she's still loyal, and she's dedicated, and she's and I think she's learning and growing and finding her place too. So she's valuable as well.
What's fascinating is that she hangs out. I mean, I think the premise for a lot of the conversations is the scenarios, the topics. It's coming from the Black American experience, but she comes and she hangs out.
Mm-hmm.
and she puts her 2 cents in and she partakes,
Yeah.
you know.
And she never she doesn't back down, or she doesn't say, "Oh, I'm not coming on there anymore." She just gives her perspective. And actually, we grew up on the same street, North Avenue, when we were
North
younger.
Ave.
Of course, I didn't know her like that, but we usually have, the last couple of years we had a reunion. She shows up to that, and she's well received, and she mingles around. So she holds her own, and she's a part of the environment, and I commend her for that. Where some of the subjects kind of get, and, it's been times she said, "Okay, are y'all trying to divide us?" But like, it's not trying to divide. It's just people need to get these issues out and talk about it, so that you can know and understand. Which is crazy, because that's part of the climate now, since we've returned back to school, that a lot of racial stuff has come up, and I deal with um, mediations throughout the week, dealing with something. A Caucasian student may say something, a black student says someone, from Asian students. So I've had a lot of those conversations this year with people feelings that are getting, hurt, and things are being said, and racial slurs and jokes and stuff. So we're in some interesting times, people, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, Baltimore is ground zero for a lot of racial things. You guys have had quite a bit, quite a lot of things happen up there
Yeah,
over recent years.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, whether it was, well, I'm not going to read off the names. People know what I'm talking about. Freddie Gray, Marilyn Mosby,
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie Rawlings Blake. Yeah, there's been a lot of Baltimore
Yeah,
happenings.
it's a lot going on.
Pew, D-Ray. Yeah.
A lot going on.
All right. So before we move on, we're almost done, David. I don't want to hold you all night. Talk about someone who discovered the Counselor's Corner, and who peeks in from time to time. He makes jokes about Western New York, us and our women, BGS. I know that he's shared the panel with women before, and he has specific opinions and rules about allowing the women onto the panels. It seems like that's something you've always been comfortable with.
Oh yeah. Shout out BGS when he comes on. He makes things happen. He gives them insight. And the interesting thing is, they listen. They challenge, but I think after the fact they'll acknowledge that something that he said was kind of true, and they may make reference, or they may inbox me or text me, um, at a later time on something. So he's dropping jewels. So I always appreciate the traffic that he brings, and the thoughts and the knowledge that he brings, because a lot of times people, we speak on our personal experiences, but then you ask people who does, their research, and they can speak to their experiences along with research that's even more powerful. And I think sometimes that's what crossed them over. Like, okay, they weren't prepared for that. They just know their bubble and their experiences. But you ask someone else, like, okay, well, this is happening in this area, or did y'all know that this was happening in this area? And they like, oh, wait a minute. So that's powerful, and I always appreciate when he come on and share, and ask people to share, and subscribe. So that's been a great experience.
Yeah, I have to attribute a good amount of my growth to his endorsing me. Because if BGS comes to your panel, if he comes to your channel, if he shares your channel, then he usually brings a crowd with him.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's powerful.
but the other thing is, yeah, he's very well read on books, on history, on government, on statistics. So you can't just approach him with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just approach him arguing, because he's very well read and very well learned. I think that's the right term, learned or learned. But he's that, and that's one of the most impressive things about listening to him. Yeah, you know, he has his detractors as well, but I always learn something when I listen to him talk.
For sure. And another person that I didn't even know, and Herb used to always make mention of him, and it seemed like even he wasn't that popular when Herb first started mentioning him, but now he's like global. Kevin Samuels.
Ooh, there's a bad word.
Yeah, Herb used to mention him, and I used to say, "Who the hell is Kevin Samuels?" Whatever. Like, why do you keep talking about this guy? And you're like, "Oh, just look it up. You got to look at his videos." And then whenever that one video had went viral and it blew up, then now it's like he's a household name. But see, that's all it takes is that. Like I often say to people, it just doesn't make or break what y'all feel about somebody. You're gonna still listen to what he says, and some of it's gonna hit home, and that's the thing. And like you said, it kind of reminds you of the sweet science of boxing, and that's why Mayweather was so successful. People didn't like him like that, but some of the things, his antics gonna hit home. And like he used to say, either some people watch me because they want to see me lose, some people watch me, they want to see me win. He said, but the bottom line is they're all still paying. They're all still gravitate. And I always thought that was interesting because people say he's boring, this and that. But when it was fight night, when the lights got bright, people were like, "Oh, who got the fight? Where's the fight party at?" And I would say to myself, I thought y'all got he's boring. Y'all don't like him, but you knew he brought the theatrics, and that's kind of how Kevin Sanders. He's gonna say what he's gonna say, and he's not gonna labor off his point. And either you like him or you don't. And some people, they're watching, and they're agreeing with some things. They just don't say it publicly.
Well, it's a mixed bag. I mean, there are a good chunk of his audience is women, right? And then there are women who don't like him. There are women who like him. There are men who don't like him, and then there are men who like him. I haven't watched recently. I mean, in a while, but there were instances where women have said, you know, you're doing a good thing. There are married couples who told him he's doing a good thing. There are men who say he's okay. He doesn't allow men. He doesn't talk to men anymore. So it's definitely a mixed bag. But I'll just say that there are several women out there who said, you know what, he makes some valid points. I just don't like how he says what he says.
Yeah,
and that's what some women in my women in my circle who hate him, but there are also women in my circle who said, you know what, yeah, he makes valid points, but I just don't like how he says what he says.
Yeah, that deliverance, that's what a lot of people get caught up on. And sometimes there's only one way to deliver a message. And I even say that in education, you only can be a shell of yourself as a teacher, as a counselor, because you gotta dance around certain things. And so it's not authentic. When you can have that authentic relationships with certain students, and you may say something like, not everybody could say, but you can say it to them. They learn from that and they come back to see you when they're adults and say, I remember you said this and you got on me about this, and I want to thank you because of that. And sometimes that needs to be driven home, but we live in a sensitive world now. Like I don't even know what you could say now without people getting so sensitive or want to cancel culture and this. So you gotta, and we talked about this before we came on, you gotta be mindful of some of the things that you say, but yet and still, some positions or some platforms or some places, you can't be real and you got to dance around stuff so the message kind of gets watered down. And I think a lot of that is happening in even in education.
Mm. Okay. Well, let me see. Now you've had we're almost done. You had one other notable recent subscriber / member to the Counselor's Corner, Obsidian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he's joined, and I think with Obsidian, he's dropping knowledge and he's giving a lot of content. But I think the one thing with the folks in the Counselor's Corner,
Yep.
they might not be ready for the overload of information that's being dropped. I think sometimes you got to give them a little, because even when I write, sometimes scenarios come up and I'm like, oh, this is a good one. Then I look at the length of it and I say, they're not going to gravitate toward this. But if it's something, you almost got to break it up, chunk it into pieces and take certain things and then drop it and then they'll go in. But if you have a long thing, they're like, oh, you wrote a whole thesis, whatever. I'm not about to read that. After the first line, I'm done with it. So, but I can see the stuff that when I read it, I was like, oh, this is some good stuff. But they're not. I don't think they're going to take the time, not to discredit them, but I just think people kind of skim read through certain things while they're working or whatever the case. This is the times that we live in. Might be in a meeting, look at this, okay, let me respond to this. But if it's something long, they may say, oh, I'll get back to this later on. And then you get caught up in your daily activities and you don't get caught up. But they need, pay attention to that. He's a force and he's dropping some good knowledge. And I'm glad he joined the Counselor's Corner.
Okay. Now see, here's one. Oh, Crystal Tootle, Johnson C. Smith University. That's, we went to JCSU. We were in some classes together. She says, I don't think Kevin Samuels makes any good growth points, in my opinion. Yeah. So he has his detractors, he has his supporters, and then he has people who say he makes valid points. I just don't like, how he says what he says. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But you're going to get that with anything.
Yeah, I was going to say that's with anything.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see what else I have here. So this is open-ended. The things you guys talk about, the things discussed in the Counselor's Corner. And everyone, David's channel is here. He goes live on Monday nights with his team. It's both men and women. Very interesting discussions. The things you guys discuss, do you think those things can be fixed long term in a community-wide way, or is it just important to have the discussion?
Well, that's one of the things people often ask, like, okay, we're talking about it, but what's the solutions? And I was like, well, you don't come up with no solutions unless you start having discussions about it. We're still at that first stage of discussing it, because for whatever reason, they think that you put something out there and all of a sudden the solution, it's going to be fixed. But you have to start having conversations. And I always said, these things, everything builds from the home. So when you're in a dysfunctional home, we all step out of the home, whether you go to work and the children go to school. If you're in a dysfunctional environment, you go to work, you you're not giving your best at work. You probably just got in an argument with your wife or significant other. Your mind is all over the place and you're not able to give your all. Same thing with school. That's the furthest thing. The teacher says something, they can yell, scream. The kids may say, that don't even bother me because mom and dad always yelling at me. And plus, I didn't have a good meal or whatever the case is. I'm mad about this, upset about that. So they're going to give resistance. So I think we deal with that. Like we have a lot of issues that we don't deal with that. So now you out in the community. So you got all these people out in the community going through certain things, and homes is not stable. So how are communities going to build when you have a bunch of people out in the community that, and not all cases, so I don't want people to think like that's not everybody's household, but it's a great deal. And no matter where, if it's in the suburbs or whatever the case is, rural, urban, you're going to have those issues. And then, like I said, it filters into work, then cities, towns, and that's where the issues is at. So I always say a lot of the stuff that we put out there, grants and stuff, and I'm thinking on the educational level that they put a lot of money into something, and I say, what good is it for us to, talk to these kids all day long? They'll probably follow the lead of us in the school, but once they get off that bus and they step in the community, it's going to be the same thing. So I think it starts from having these conversations. Now we haven't got that far. I think anytime you have a conversation, you're going to absorb something in your head, and hopefully you can move forward to it. No, we don't have the master plan, so I think it can change, but it takes people willing to change, willing to make changes for it to happen. But it starts with having conversations and getting this information out there. So,
and sometimes having uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. And I think once you get through those and you're able to okay, that wasn't so bad. Now you can look at yourself and try to move forward. And I think that's where we're stuck at.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's good to talk about it. I do think there can be changes, but it's going to be a slow process. But right now we're kind of people talking about the gender wars, the men and women going back and forth. So that's another element to it. And one of the other subjects we talk about, independent women and stuff like that. It's a lot to this. So, but we try to have at least start having conversations about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, David, we are at an hour and a half. I want to respect your time, and the NFL draft is on, so and I have to have some dinner. Do you have any parting thoughts?
I would just say, hey, if first thing, like I said, I wrote a couple books, Cocktail Conversations by the Controversial Counselor and No Friday Foolishness. That's sort of like a self-help, like thoughts I have every Friday. It came derived from my middle school kids that one day I came up with the concept that, they were out of control, would come in on Fridays with drama. And I said, listen, we about to start a new campaign, No Friday Foolishness. Like I'm not about to, it's Friday. We're closing out a week. I want peace, and we're going into the weekend to recuperate, and then we're going to start over Monday. There's no need to end the week like this. So I kind of rode that concept. So every Friday I'll post a thought of mine or whatever was going on, and then in the book you can journal based on those particular thoughts I wrote. So check that out. And again, as Anwar had brought up about the Counselor's Corner, if you're on Facebook, join that group, the Counselor's Corner. My page, my personal page, David Lorenzo Glover, I think I'm at 5,000, but sometimes I have to drop people out who's inactive, and I'll add new friends to the list. But really most of my action happens in the counselor's corner. So, join that. I'm on Instagram as David Glover, LinkedIn, David Glover, and pretty much Facebook, David Lorenzo Glover, or the controversial counselor. So if you Google or put that in, I'll pop up. As
David,
Shaq say, Google me.
Google. Well, David, this is a perfect time. I mean, for the first part of this string, we talked about writing and being authors. David actually wrote the foreword for part 1 of my book project. And for those of you who don't know, David was a part of arguably like the most successful basketball program in Western New York, the LaSalle Explorers from Niagara Falls. So David wrote the foreword for part 1 of my book. When I publish it, if anyone buys it, you'll see a foreword written by David. And by the way, David, last month, you might laugh at this. I told Jason Rowe this in Buffalo. Last month when I was visiting my father, because my father lives out in the Capital Region, I went to Glens Falls, probably for the first time, and I went and saw the Civic Center for the first time.
Oh wow!
It just
cool.
Because I was shooting some location footage,
and
it just so happened that their sectional finals were that day. So I saw all these people going in and going in and going out, and I was like, "What the hell's happening here?" So I asked someone, "What's happening here today?" She said, "Oh, it's the sectionals." So, "Oh, let me go in and see." So some of the Albany area schools were competing, and I said, "Wow, this is the Glens Falls Civic Center. This is it."
Cool. So did you run into Jason Rowe there, or when you was in Buffalo?
No, I was in Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
For my mother's birthday. So my dad's birthday is at the beginning of March. So I had to go out to Albany, and then my mom's birthday is at the end of March. And for my 9 to 5, Monday's my day off. So I knew that I wanted to go drive around Buffalo and take location shots so I can, create promotional videos for my book. And I said, you know what, maybe who can I interview while I'm here? So I said, oh, let me see if Jason's up for a sit down, because we did one via print and then we did one via Zoom. And he said, yeah, come over to Bishop Timon. So I went over to Bishop Timon. Actually, I'm finishing up that video right now for my sports channel. I'm going to share it on Facebook, and I'm going to share it on my community tab here. But yeah, Jason, me and Jason, we sat down and we talked, and for about a half hour, and we had a good time. He's a good guy.
Cool. Yeah.
And I gotta circle back with Tim, because Tim has agreed to do a something. I'll probably try to get him on a live stream over on my sports channel, but he agreed to that. So yeah,
he's doing things with Train. Was it Train to Win to Win? His thing. He's doing great things. I see he posting about that. So
and they're talking about partnering on a basketball camp.
Oh, okay.
This summer. So that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, David, I'm going to go ahead and wind this down. Thank you for coming back to my channel.
Oh, no problem.
I think you guys are talking about some important things over on the Counselor's Corner, and it's always good to have you back. And I thank you for your collaboration and support in my projects.
And thank you too, and thank you for enlightening me and always informing me of good topics. Keeping me up to date on media, what's happening and what's going on different platforms. So shared interest, whatever. That's what we got to do to build and grow and to connect with good people.
Yeah, if I find something I think you guys can use, I definitely always send it over.
I appreciate that. It was nice being here. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and joined and looked me up. And hey, let's keep building and keep growing and keep having these uncomfortable conversations, because this is the world we live in, and it's going to help us grow for sure.
All right, David.
All right.
Take care.
All right, you too.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you to everyone who watched live. If you're watching on the playback, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to throw something in the tip jar. That information will be below in the description box. My Cash App and my PayPal. I want to ask viewers once again to consider signing up for the Big Words LLC newsletter. This link is below in the description box. I plan to send the first one out really soon, and those will be monthly. I'm not going to spam your box every day and every week. I don't have time, but just monthly. I'm a YouTube content creator, and I'm also a writer, just like David. So please consider joining. So with that, the NFL draft is on. I think one of the Michigan football players went #1 to the Detroit Lions. So I'm going to eat some leftover spaghetti here and veg out for the rest of the night. So everyone, thank you for watching, and thank you for those who watch on the playback. Always remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.